I want to begin today with something that may be difficult to hear, but that I tell you with the same directness and the same love that my grandfather used when he told it to me 40 years ago on the banks of the Ganga in Varanasi. If you have been praying to Lakshmi sincerely, for months, perhaps for years, and the prosperity you are praying for has not arrived in a way that matches the sincerity of your devotion, the problem is almost certainly not your devotion. Your devotion is real. I have seen enough genuinely devoted Hindu families in my 45 years of work to know that most people who come to these teachings are not lacking in sincerity. What they are lacking, and what I'm going to give you today, is the specific knowledge of three ways that the puja itself, regardless of the devotion behind it, I can be performed in a manner that the ancient texts describe as driving Lakshmi away rather than drawing her near. These are not minor points of procedure. They are not mistakes about which flower to offer or whether the diyaya should be placed to the left or right. These are three fundamental errors at the level of the inner relationship between the worshipper and the goddess. Errors so common in modern Hindu practice, particularly in the diaspora, where this knowledge has been partially lost, that I encounter them in virtually every home I visit where the family is struggling financially despite genuine devotion. I am going to identify each one precisely. I am going to explain from the Vedic text exactly why each one creates the specific problem it creates. So, and I am going to give you the correction for each, not as a replacement for your current practice, but as a deepening of it, an adjustment that transforms what you're already doing from something sincere but incomplete into something that works at the full power the tradition intends. I am Guruji Raman Sharma. I was born in Varanasi, trained at Banaras Hindu University in Vedic philosophy, Sanskrit, and Jyotish Shastra, and formed in the deepest dimensions of this knowledge by my grandfather Pandit Vishnu Sharma, who served as a priest at the Kashi Vishwanath temple and who transmitted to me through an unbroken chain of Brahmin learning going back generations before him the precise and complete understanding of how Goddess Lakshmi's relationship with the human household actually works. My grandfather indeed said something that has stayed with me for 45 years. The most dangerous error in worship is not irreverence. Irreverence at least creates awareness that something is wrong. The most dangerous error is sincere worship, performed with an incorrect understanding of the nature of what is being asked. Because this error is invisible, it feels like devotion, and it can continue for years without the worshipper realizing why the results never arrive. What I'm sharing today is part of the nine sacred laws of Lakshmi that I have spent a lifetime organizing from the Vedic, Tantric, and Vastu traditions. The three mistakes I'm going to describe are not three separate errors in three separate categories. They are three expressions of the same underlying misunderstanding of Lakshmi's nature, three different ways of approaching the same goddess with the same fundamental mistake. Once you see the pattern, all three corrections become clear at once. And the transformation in your practice that results from making all three corrections simultaneously is not additive, it is multiplicative. Write Om Shrim Mahalakshmiye Namaha in the comments right now, not as a transaction, not as a request. Write it as a greeting, as the recognition that she is already present in this moment, that your turning toward her is already an act of her grace working through you. Now, let me speak to something important before I reveal the three mistakes. I understand the desperation that many families carry into their worship of Lakshmi. And I have sat with families in genuine financial crisis, unable to pay rent, facing debt, watching opportunities collapse, who approach their Friday puja with a quality of prayer that is less devotion and more negotiation. They make offers, they make promises, they describe their needs in detail as though Lakshmi needs to be informed of the urgency of the situation. And they leave the puja room not with the peace of someone who has connected with the divine, but with the anxiety of someone who has submitted a request and is now waiting to find out if it has been approved. I understand this completely. My own prayers during my difficult years in my late 20s had exactly this quality. And it was my grandfather who told me, in the most loving and direct way I have ever been corrected in my life. What you are describing as prayer is not prayer, it is transaction. And Lakshmi does not enter into transactions. The ancient Lakshmi Tantra, one of the most important texts specifically dedicated to the worship of Goddess Lakshmi, contains a teaching that I consider the single most important principle in all of Lakshmi practice. It states that Lakshmi, among all the deities, is the most responsive to a specific quality of heart, which it calls Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion, devotion unmixed with desire for specific result. This is not because the goddess is indifferent to her devotees' needs. It is because she understands those needs more completely than the devotees themselves do. And she is capable of addressing them more skillfully than any specific request could direct her. The person who approaches Lakshmi with a pure and devoted heart without demanding a specific form of result is the person who receives her most complete blessing. The person who approaches her with a transaction, with a specific demand, with the energy of desperate need, is inadvertently placing their own limited understanding of what they need above the infinite wisdom of the goddess. And she, out of respect for the free will of her devotees, gives them what they have asked for, or nothing rather than what she could give them if they would open to her completely. This is the first mistake, and it is the most fundamental of the three. The first mistake is praying to Lakshmi from a state of lack, praying with the energy of scarcity, of need, of desperation, of demand, praying in a way that broadcasts at the deepest vibrational level of the prayer the inner message: I do not have enough, I'm not enough, and unless you intervene, this situation cannot change. The reason this prayer does not work is not that Lakshmi is unmoved by need. The reason is that the Vedic tradition has a very precise understanding of how divine energy responds to human states of consciousness. The Chandogya Upanishad teaches, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that. The divine reality is not separate from you, it is the deepest nature of your own consciousness. When you approach Lakshmi with the inner declaration of I do not have, you are broadcasting a vibrational state that is the precise opposite of the quality of Lakshmi's energy. She is abundance, she is fullness. Ganeshi is the overflowing completeness of the cosmic principle of prosperity. When a state of contraction, lack, and emptiness approaches her, the contrast between these two vibrational qualities is so extreme that, as my grandfather described it, the connection cannot be made. The two frequencies do not meet. The correction, and this is something I want you to begin practicing from your very next puja, is the establishment of what I call the Bhakti Sankalpa, the devotional intention. Before you begin any prayer or puja to Lakshmi, sit quietly for 3 full minutes, not praying, not reviewing your financial situation, not making a list of what you need, simply sitting, breathing slowly, and allowing yourself to arrive completely in this moment, in this breath, or in this body. So, by in the recognition that abundance is not something you are waiting for from the outside, it is something you are opening to from within. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad teaches Purnamada Purnamidam. That is whole, this is whole. From wholeness, wholeness is born. When wholeness is taken from wholeness, wholeness alone remains. Before you light the diya, before you place the first flower, before you recite a single syllable of mantra, sit in the wholeness that the Upanishad is pointing to. Feel that at the most fundamental level of your being, you are not a person in scarcity approaching a goddess of abundance. You are one expression of the divine wholeness, approaching another expression of the same divine wholeness. Then recite this mantra 3 times as your opening. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is the Shanti mantra from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And in the tradition of my grandfather, it was always the first mantra recited before any puja, before the Ganesha invocation, before the lamp, before anything else. It establishes the inner state from which the prayer is made. It is the difference between a prayer made from a cup that is empty and a prayer made from a cup that is already full and overflowing. Lakshmi responds to the second quality, always. After the wholeness mantra, close your eyes for one further minute and make this internal statement with complete sincerity. Goddess Lakshmi, I'm not coming to you with my poverty. I'm coming to you with my gratitude for what already exists in my life, for the breath I'm breathing, of the family I'm serving, the capacity to work and to learn and to practice. I'm opening to receive more of what is already present and real. I'm not asking you to fix my lack. I'm asking you to help me see the abundance I have not yet recognized. This shift in the quality of the prayer, from petition of lack to opening from fullness, is, in the experience of every family I have guided through it, the single most immediately transformative change available in Lakshmi practice. Families who make this shift consistently report that within days of beginning to pray from this inner state, the quality of their puja changes in a way they feel bodily, a warmth, a stillness, a sense of connection that was absent from the prayer before. That felt quality is not imagination. It is the beginning of the contact between the worshipper's consciousness and the divine energy they are invoking. Now, the second mistake. This one is specific and technical, and I want to give it its complete explanation because without that explanation, the correction will seem like empty procedure rather than the profound principle that it actually is. The second mistake is worshipping goddess Lakshmi without the complete sacred context of her divine relationship, specifically without the proper invocation of Lord Vishnu and without the first and always prior invocation of Lord Ganesha. In most modern Hindu homes, particularly in the diaspora, Lakshmi Puja is performed with a Lakshmi Murti or image, some flowers, and a lamp, the Om Shri mantra, and sincere prayer. This is beautiful. It is genuine. But the Vedic tradition is explicit, and the Lakshmi Tantra makes this point more clearly than any other text I know, that Lakshmi's energy is not separable from Vishnu's energy in any context. They are Lakshmi Narayan, the two aspects of one divine reality. Vishnu is the principle of preservation, of order, of dharma. Lakshmi is the principle of abundance, of grace, of prosperity. They are not two deities who happen to be married. They are two aspects of one cosmic reality, like heat and light in the same flame. You cannot have one without the other. When you worship Lakshmi alone, without Vishnu present, without his image, without his invocation as the context in which her blessing flows, you're asking for the abundance dimension of the divine, without inviting the dharmic order that makes that abundance stable, purposeful, and self sustaining. The Vedic tradition consistently describes Lakshmi as Vishnu Priya, the beloved of Vishnu, and as Vishnu Patni, the consort of Vishnu. These are not merely biographical facts about the goddess, they are descriptions of how her energy functions. Her abundance flows most completely in the context of Dharma, in the context of Vishnu's ordering principle. Without that context, what manifests, see, is what the ancient texts call Chanchala Lakshmi, the unstable, restless Lakshmi, the prosperity that comes and goes, that arrives without warning and departs without explanation, that never quite settles into the permanent, self renewing abundance that is her true gift. And before either Lakshmi or Vishnu, before any sacred action whatsoever, Ganesha must be invoked. The Ganapati Upanishad describes Ganesha as the Vignaharta, is the remover of obstacles, but also as something more specific, the Lord of beginnings, the guardian of the threshold. Between the ordinary world and the sacred world, every puja that begins without his invocation begins without his protection. Every channel that is opened without first asking Ganesha to clear it may open, but the flow through it will encounter the unseen obstructions that Ganesha's presence would have removed. My grandfather was absolute on this. He would not even light the first diya without first reciting the Ganesha invocation with complete attention. He said, to begin a sacred action without first calling on Ganesha is to walk into a forest without a light. You may arrive at your destination, but you will stumble many times in the dark. The correction for this second mistake is the establishment of what the tradition calls Trimurti Stapana at the puja space, the presence of all three: Lord Ganesha at the left, Goddess Lakshmi in the center, Lord Vishnu, or a representation of his energy. It may be a shaligram stone, which is the traditional representation of Vishnu's presence in home worship, or a small murti or image to the right of Lakshmi. In this arrangement, Ganesha guards the entrance to the sacred space, Lakshmi occupies its heart, and Vishnu provides the dharmic field in which her abundance can establish itself. Never perform a Lakshmi puja without Ganesha invoked first. Never perform a Lakshmi puja without Vishnu present in the puja space in some form. These are not suggestions. They are the structural requirements for the puja to access its full power. The specific sequence of invocation is: first, Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha 21 times with full attention, feeling the elephant headed Lord of Beginnings clearing the path. Then, with Vishnu's presence established in the puja space, recite Om Namo Narayanaya 12 times, invoking the sustaining, ordering dharmic field in which Lakshmi's blessing will operate. Then, and only then, begin the Lakshmi invocation. Om Shreem Mahalakshmiye Namaha 108 times. In this sequence, you are not performing three separate acts. You are creating one complete invocation. Ganesha clears the path. Vishnu establishes the field. Lakshmi fills the field with abundance. Each is necessary. None is sufficient alone. And now the third mistake. In many ways, this is the one that requires the most courage to hear, because it is the one that places the responsibility most squarely with the practitioner, not with the quality of their puja materials or the correctness of their ritual sequence, but with their own actions in the world beyond the puja room. The third mistake is treating Lakshmi Puja as a substitute for action rather than a preparation for action. Praying for abundance and then waiting, praying and remaining passive, praying with sincerity at the puja room, and then walking back into the ordinary day and continuing to do exactly what you have always done, expecting that the prayer will somehow produce a different result without a different action. The Bhagavad Gita addresses this more directly than any other sacred text in the Hindu tradition. In the third chapter, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, Nahai kashchit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit. No one can remain inactive, not even for a single moment. And a few verses later, he makes the specific point that is most relevant here. He who performs the sacrificial offering and then renounces action is not practicing renunciation. He is practicing a form of self deception. The sacred action, the puja, the mantra, the ritual, is the preparation for action in the world, not the replacement for it. It opens the channel. What flows through the channel is the combined energy of the divine blessing and the human action aligned with it. The ancient Vedic tradition has a name for what happens when prayer is performed without the corresponding action in the world. It is called karma sannyas, the abandonment of action. And the Bhagavad Gita is explicit that it is a spiritual error, not because action without prayer is sufficient, it is not, but because prayer without action is equally incomplete. The lamp without oil cannot burn. The oil without the lamp cannot give light. Prayer is the lamp, action is the oil, Lakshmi's blessing is the flame that requires both to illuminate. Let me be precise about what action means in this context, because it is not the same as working harder at whatever you are already doing. Chanakya identifies this principle in the Arthashastra with characteristic precision. Arthasya, Moolam Karma, the root of wealth is activity, not any activity, aligned activity, activity that flows from the clarity and direction established by the devotional practice. The puja is performed correctly in the bhakti state I described in the first correction, does something specific in the realm of your inner life. It clarifies, it reveals the next step that your rational mind alone might not have seen. The ancient teachers described this as Lakshmi's guidance, the quiet, persistent movement of awareness toward the opportunity that is actually available, rather than the opportunity you have been insisting on receiving. The correction for this third mistake begins at the end of each puja, after the arti, after the distribution of prasad, after the period of silence that closes the formal practice. Sit for exactly 7 minutes in a specific quality of inner listening, not praying, not planning, simply listening. In those 7 minutes, allow whatever arises to arise without judgment. Let's say the thought about a phone call you have been avoiding, the idea for a project that keeps returning despite your dismissal of it, the awareness of a relationship that needs to be honored or repaired, the sense that a specific skill you have been developing is ready to be offered in a new way. Whatever arises in those 7 minutes after the puja, write it down. Then, before the day ends, take one concrete action that moves toward it, not a large action, one step, a phone call, a message sent, a conversation initiated, a decision made, one step. This practice, by 7 minutes of inner listening after puja, followed by one concrete action before the day ends, is what my grandfather called the completion of the offering. He said, the puja is your half of the communication. The action is your response to what you have heard. Without the response, the communication remains one sided. And Lakshmi, who is Vishnu's consort and understands perfectly the principle of karma that governs the human world, does not multiply incomplete offerings. She multiplies complete ones. The mantra that accompanies this third correction is from the Bhagavad Gita itself. Not technically a Lakshmi mantra, but one of the most powerful prosperity mantras in all of Vedic literature because of the depth of the truth it carries. Om Kriya Yoga Sampanno Lokam Uttamam Prapnuyat. He who is endowed with the yoga of action attains the highest world. Recite this 7 times after your 7 minutes of inner listening as you prepare to take your one step of aligned action for the day. It seals the connection between the devotional practice and the active dimension of your life, establishing both as parts of one complete sacred action. I want to bring these three corrections together now because they are not three separate practices. They are one complete transformation of the quality of your relationship with Lakshmi. The first correction transforms the inner state from which you pray, from lack to wholeness, from petition to opening, from demand to reception. The second correction completes the structural context of your worship. Ganesha first, Vishnu present, Lakshmi at the center of her proper divine field. The third correction closes the loop between the sacred dimension of your practice and the active dimension of your life. Puja that opens the channel, action that moves through it, 7 minutes of listening that links the two. As a family that makes all three corrections simultaneously is not simply improving their puja, they're establishing a completely different quality of relationship with the goddess, one that the Lakshmi Tantra describes as Nitya Seva, perpetual service, the quality of devotion that does not happen once a week and then disappear into the ordinary life, but that permeates both the sacred practice and the ordinary day as one continuous act of awareness. My grandfather practiced this quality of Nitya Seva every day of his life. I never saw him enter or leave a room without a moment of interior acknowledgement of the divine. I never saw him eat without a moment of gratitude before the first bite. I never saw him make a significant decision without a period of inner listening. And I never saw him pray for something and then sit waiting for it to arrive without simultaneously asking, what action is mine to take today, right now, in the direction of what I am praying for? He was the most practically effective person I have ever known and also the most deeply devoted. He did not experience any contradiction between these two. He said they were the same thing expressed in two languages. This practice, the complete corrected Lakshmi devotion that combines the Bhakti Sankalpa, the Trimurti Stapana, and the 7 minute listening practice followed by aligned action, is one of the 9 sacred laws I have spent 45 years organizing. It is in many ways the central law, the law that most directly governs the quality of the relationship between the devotee and the goddess, and from which all other practices draw their deepest power. The lamp ritual, the mantra sadhana, the vastu alignments, the threshold activation, all of these are amplified beyond measure when the inner relationship from which they are practiced has been corrected in the three ways I have described today. In my next teaching, I will share the specific practice from the Atharva Veda for the purification of the home's energy at the new moon, the Amavasya practice that the ancient rishis identified as the single most powerful act of clearing the accumulated energetic debris of the previous lunar cycle, and that must be performed at least once per lunar month if the sacred practices of the home are to maintain their full power. Most families in the diaspora have lost this practice entirely, and without it, do even the most consistently performed Friday rituals gradually lose their potency as the accumulated energy of the month builds up in the space around them. Subscribe and turn on notifications so that teaching reaches you when it is published. Write Om Shrim Mahalakshmiye Namaha in the comments. And this time, write it from the inner state of wholeness that I have described today. Let the goddess feel the difference in the vibration of that writing. Share this teaching with any family in your community whose devotion is real, but whose results have not matched the sincerity of their practice. The gap between sincere prayer and effective prayer is precisely what we have addressed today. Close that gap, and everything changes. Would may Goddess Lakshmi receive your prayers with the full joy and grace that is her nature, not as a goddess petitioned by need, but as a beloved mother welcomed by a child who has finally understood what she was offering all along. May Lord Ganesha remove every subtle obstacle from the path of your practice. May Lord Vishnu's dharmic order hold and sustain every blessing that Lakshmi extends toward your household. And may the wisdom of the ancient rishis, passed through an unbroken chain of devotion from the banks of the Ganga to wherever you are in this world today, light your path home to the abundance that has always been waiting for you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.